Welcome to the AI Corner. I'm your host, Mike Bailey, here to spotlight the people shaping New Zealand's AI future. In today's episode, we're speaking with Jacob Bank. And now, typically we talk to Kiwis and Australians, but today's guest is someone who's building the scaffolding for AI agents on a global scale. So I'm stoked to have Jacob with us. He's the CEO and founder of Relay.app. He was previously one of the leads for product when it came to Gmail and Google Calendar at Google. So this guy knows product inside out. But welcome to the pod, Jacob.
Thanks so much, Mike. I'm excited.
Awesome. What first pushed you from being a Google sort of product manager and then moving your work in towards founding Relay?
I think I have to go 2 steps before that for the story to make any sense. My background originally was in AI research. I thought I was going to be a professor one day. My research was always at the intersection of AI and productivity tools. The product that was supposed to be my PhD was on how you can build an AI assistant that lives inside a digital calendar. It turned out that I was not particularly good at academic research, but I had some potential as a startup founder and a product manager. So I ended up dropping out of my PhD to start my first company, which was an AI-powered digital calendar called Timeful. We then got acquired by Google. So that's how I ended up at Google. My background was actually not in big tech product management. My background was in AI research and then startups that build, cutting-edge productivity tools based on that research. And then I sort of ended up at Google, where I eventually became the product lead for Google Calendar, for Gmail, for several other products. And so in many ways, leaving Google to go back to starting an AI startup was a return to my natural course of action, more so than a big change.
Awesome. I mean, it's a natural segue, right? If you know in terms of what you built in Relay and what you are building today, if you know the Google product and you know that space intimately, you're connecting and creating a scaffolding into a lot of those tools, right?
Yeah, but maybe I can give you a better and more detailed answer about what motivated me to build this product at this time. The first was a personal motivation where I wanted to go from working in a large organization to starting a company of my own, to learn and grow in new ways, et cetera. That's personal. But the second, and I think more interesting reason was I knew there was going to be a huge change in productivity tools. This was in 2021, so it was like a year before ChatGPT came out. And for my entire prior career, a productivity tool was a place where you go to click buttons. You go to Gmail, you click some buttons and you send an email. You go to Google Docs, you click some buttons and you write a document. And I was like, oof, something's about to change here. Like, as AI gets more capable, something's going to be about to change. And the way we're going to think about productivity tools are not places where I go to click buttons, but AI systems or agents that do work on our behalf. And yes, you have to click some buttons to configure the agent, but once you've configured the agent, it does work on your behalf automatically on its own. And I was really excited about this potential future of like a totally different way about thinking of helpful ways to build tools that people use to get stuff done. And I didn't think it was going to be possible to build that product within an existing company, whether it's Google or any other. And so combining that opportunity with my personal goals, it was like the obvious thing to do was to leave and start a new company. And that's what ended up becoming Relay.app.
Wicked. And how did you actually get started in building the company? I'm always curious as to what was the first step you took?
Yeah, now my path was different because I had started a company before and I had built up very close relationships at Google over 6 years with the people I really wanted to work with. And so for me, the first 2 steps were, which I did in parallel, were building an initial team and raising some money. Because I knew from the beginning that I wanted to go down the venture-backed route. We can talk about why and why you might not want to do that, but I knew from the beginning that was going to be what I wanted to do. And so my first order of business was getting some people to join me. And so I was lucky to be able to recruit some of my favorite engineers and designers from my work on Gmail and Google Calendar. And then second, we need to raise some capital. And so I went back to the investors that had backed my previous company, and one of them, Coastal Ventures, led our seed round. So those were like the first 2 steps. Like I kind of had this vision of, I think we want to do something in cross-product workflow powered by AI. Let's get some capital and some people to help turn it into reality. And the framing at the time was not, I've got this all figured out, come work on my idea and let's build according to this exact mock. It was more like, there's an opportunity here. I don't know exactly what shape it's going to take. Again, this was a year before ChatGPT, so it was like totally unclear. Maybe we should have built ChatGPT, but like it was totally unclear what shape it was going to take, and I had no idea what shape it was going to take. So my invitation to our investors and to our early team members was like, there's a big opportunity here. come join from the very beginning and help me figure out what that big opportunity is. And it took us like 2.5 years to get our first paying customer for
Wow.
Relay.app because it took us a long time to figure out what that thing was.
Oh, true. Amazing. And so what did the product actually look like at day dot? And then how did it potentially shift when GPT was, blowing up?
Yeah, so there wasn't a single product, but in the first year and a half of the company, we went through about 9 different experiments and prototypes. We built an automated to-do list that would help suggest what you should do next based on all your tools. We built a performance review tool. We built a stand-up tool. We built a contextual knowledge base. We built a wiki. We built a bunch of stuff that all had this. We built a morning digest, email, or we built this like collaborative awareness tool that was a Chrome extension that would tell you who had worked on the thing that you were looking at. We built a bunch of different prototypes that all had the same basic structure in that they aggregated data from multiple tools and they tried to use AI to do something smart on top of them. And then the tool that ended up getting the most traction was the new employee onboarding tool. Because we built a tool that would look at your calendar, it would look at your documents, it would create this nice onboarding guide for the new hire. It would capture all the tasks that needed to happen across HR and IT and the hiring manager, and it would automatically send the right emails and the right Slack messages. And we actually got several customers signed up to do that. And then what I thought at the time was unlucky thing, but turned out to be a super lucky thing happened. Right when we were signing up all these beta customers, this was in April of 2022. And I don't know if you remember exactly what was happening in April 22, but that was when there was a major correction in the stock market. All the tech companies, public and private, had their valuations drop dramatically, and everyone stopped hiring. And so of the 20 beta customers we had signed up for this employee onboarding product, 17 of the 20 were like, no, sorry, we're not hiring anymore. Like, this is no longer relevant. Do you have an offboarding product? And we were like, oh, no, we don't have that. And so that first sort of raised a doubt in my mind. And then I was thinking about it more. I was like, I am not the right person to build an HR onboarding product. Like some HR expert should build that. Like I didn't feel like I had founder market fit in that product. But what it turned out was when we looked at it carefully, we realized that it had this very general structure where you have a workflow. The workflow has a combination of human in the loop tasks and automated steps, some of them powered by AI, some by more traditional automation. There are multiple people involved. And we're like, oh, there's actually a bunch of workflows that have that structure. And so we generalized this HR onboarding product into what became Relay.app. And the idea of Relay, the reason for the name Relay was it's a relay race. Like the person does their part, another person does their part, the AI does its part, a human does its part. And I think that name has actually kind of served us well throughout. And that's what took us into the market that we're in today, which is you could call it a number of things. You could call it cross-product workflow automation. You could call it an AI agent builder. You could call it an AI automation tool. Whatever you want to call it, that's the market we were in as of the beginning of 2023.
Right.
Now, funnily enough, even when we decided to enter that market and we're like, this is the thing we're going for, like, this is what the opportunity is, this is how we're going to replace a bunch of work that people don't want to do with AI assistance, it still took us pretty much a year from that point to get a legit paying customer. And I can tell you more about that journey. If you're interested, it was a combination of positioning and messaging and figuring out who we are and who we're selling to. But ultimately, the thing that kind of broke us out of our paralysis was anchoring on an existing market. Because when we originally launched, we were like, oh, no, we're not like Zapier because we have this human task management and collaboration component. And then people would say, oh, okay, so you're not Zapier. Can you replace Asana for me? And we're like, no, sorry. We're not like a full-fledged project management or work management tool. We're this new category that should exist in between Zapier and Asana, which we now know is like the agent builder category. At the time, we're like, it's this new thing. It's like a collaborative tool that has some automation and some human in the loop. And it's kind of like a to-do list and kind of like an automation, but it's got some AI in it. And for like 6 months, we just like could not explain to anyone why they should care about that. And so then we were just like, no. We're like Zapier, but we're easier to use. And we have AI built in and we have a human in the loop built in. And that was the positioning that we launched our real product with in October of 2023, very end of 2023. And that's when things started to work. We got our first few paying customers at the end of 2023. And then it's been a nice ride since then. But that's like the whole backstory of how we had this initial insight, which was cross-product collaboration powered by AI in a way that was never before possible. And when you look at what we're doing now and you look at that initial vision, it makes perfect sense. But boy, was there a winding road in there where like individual components did not make sense. But then we, iterated our way to something good eventually.
Also, I mean, every journey to product market fit takes its own twists and turns, right? And you've certainly been through your fair share. And maybe you could help anchor us because I think a lot of the audience and a lot of people in the space in general have different definitions of what an AI agent is. And that's in essence what you're building, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's helpful to ground in what your definition might be before we talk a little bit further.
Yeah, I know this is a hot topic. Let me first not touch on the definition of an automation versus a workflow or an agent because I think a lot of people get trapped in there, and I think that's missing the point. And I'll tell you why I think that's missing the point. I think the most important thing people need to think about is when you're using AI to help you in your work, you can use it in one of three modalities. Number one is a chatbot, like ChatGPT. You go to a website, you type in chatgpt.com or whatever, and then you start having a conversation. You ask it some research queries, you iterate on some content. You're having a live, interactive conversation with an AI in an open-ended chatbot where the core experience is this text messaging conversation. There are many use cases where a chatbot is appropriate.
Mhm.
Second modality is a copilot. A copilot means you are working on some other artifact, a document, you're writing some code, you're making a website, and then either on a side panel, typically on the left, sometimes on the right, or through an inline autocomplete, the AI is helping you produce that artifact. So like the original cursor autocomplete was a classic example of a copilot. Grammarly is a classic example of a copilot. I would even call like Lovable and Bolt and V0 this class of tools. Those are all copilots because on the left-hand side, you're having a conversation, but then the 2/3 of the screen is the artifact that you're producing with AI.
Mm.
And both chatbots and copilots are similar in that you go to an app and you start doing stuff live synchronously with AI. The third modality, and this is what makes it an agent for me, is totally different.
Mm.
An agent works on its own on your behalf without you needing to go to an app and type to it. Once you've configured an agent, it does things on your behalf. It might automatically label emails for you. It might automatically log contacts in your CRM for you. It might automatically draft social posts for you. Whatever it does it automatically on its own behind the scenes. And so to me, in practical terms, that is the key definition of an AI agent in that it's different from a chatbot or a copilot because it works on its own behind the scenes. You can never think of a chatbot as replacing a human coworker. You can never really think of a copilot as replacing human coworkers. Those are augmenting things you're doing. There are legitimate cases where instead of hiring a junior social media writer, you could hire an AI agent to do that job because it has the full set of kind of automatic capabilities that you'd expect from a person. So that's, I think, the definition that really matters. It does work on your behalf on its own. Now, there's a nuance there where I think there are some agents that are more pure agents and
Mm.
some agents that are more workflowy. But I think, let me tell you first the difference and then why I think the debate is silly. The technical difference is all about who makes the flowchart and when. So every task has a flowchart. You know, some of the use cases we've talked about, like I want to create a weekly report based on this customer, or I want to do this for a new hire. Every task has a flowchart. First, I'm going to look up all the recent meetings. Then I'm going to analyze them. Then I'm going to write them in a report in this report. Every task has a flowchart. Every real world task has a flowchart. Me going to the grocery store has a flowchart. First, I get the produce, then I get the milk, then I get the meat, whatever. Every task has a flowchart. The difference between a workflow and an agent is who creates that flowchart and
Right.
when. And so in a workflow, the flowchart designer, typically the person, creates that flowchart in advance. And so I say, AI, whenever a new lead comes in, you are going to look up their LinkedIn profile, you're going to extract these elements, you're going to score them according to these criteria, and then you're going to write them into the CRM. And you, AI, you're going to need to use your judgment and your intelligence in many of those places. But ultimately, I'm going to tell you the flowchart of the overall task and where you have latitude to make decisions and where you don't have latitude to make decisions. An agent, on the other hand, you give a goal and a set of tools, and it figures out the flowchart on the fly. So, for example, I would say like, add my new leads to my CRM and enrich them. The tools you have available are you can look up LinkedIn profiles, you can do some other web searches, etc. And so that's the technical difference. Flowchart created in advance by a person or flowchart created on the fly based on goals and a set of tools by the AI. Here's why I think the debate is silly. Two reasons. Number one, no matter how you give this agent instructions, whether it's via a more prescriptive workflow or via a more general prompt, it's still playing the same fundamental role in your work. It wakes up, it does some work, it produces an output, and then it goes back to sleep.
You're giving it agency in some way, shape, or form, whether it's with like train on a train track or it's a car going to a destination, right?
Exactly. And then it's just a spectrum
Yeah.
of how Much autonomy are you giving it versus how crisp and definitive are your instructions?
Yeah.
Just like when you hire a junior employee. If you hire a very junior social media manager, you may say, we post on these days, here are our content themes, here's how you research each post, here's when you should post each thing. Whereas if you hired a very senior social media manager, you would say just like, here's our brand goals, go, figure it out. And then there's a spectrum, everywhere in between. And so every workflow I've ever created has some steps where I give the AI latitude to produce content or make decisions. And every agent I've created, and I bet every agent you've ever created, has some portion of the prompt where it's like, well, first do this, and then do this, and then maybe consider doing this or this. And what you're doing is you're basically encoding your workflow instructions just in natural language instead of a flowchart. And so I think the right way we should think about it is an agent is an AI system that does work on our behalf.
Yeah.
When we give that AI the ability to do work on our behalf, we need to be confident that it's going to do good work. And there are two ways that we can build confidence that it's going to do good work. One is we can give it more guidance in advance about the flowchart of the task. And then second, we can say, I want to be a human in the loop before you do these types of actions. And so my definition of an agent is it does work automatically on your behalf. And then every agent exists on some spectrum between fully defined flowchart of what you need to do and fully open-ended goal-oriented tool calling.
I love that bucketing of the differences of the spectrum there. And I think it ultimately comes down to the goal that you're trying to achieve, right? Like, are you trying to get the same task done over and over with a almost deterministic outcome, or are you wanting full creativity or more creativity in a probabilistic way?
And I'll give you two examples of what I think is way better as a workflowy type thing and what can be better as an agent-y type thing. The best use cases I've found for agents are open-ended research use cases.
Right.
Because when I'm doing a research task, like figure out what a good churn rate is for a SaaS company, I don't know how many times I'm going to need to Google. I don't know if I'm going to need to watch YouTube videos or read LinkedIn posts or go to Reddit. It may be I do one Google search and the first result gives me my answer. It may be I have to do 25 Google searches, 5 Reddit searches, 6 YouTube searches, 3 LinkedIn searches, and a bunch of other stuff before I get it. And so that's an example where goal-oriented tool calling with the agent having autonomy is a way more efficient way to tackle those research tasks, which is one reason tools like deep research are so good, because the AI can go off and do its thing and then come back with a nicely packaged answer without you having to say, run 3 Google searches, then run 3 YouTube searches, then run 5 Reddit searches, etc. On the opposite end of the spectrum, meeting follow-up is a much more workflowy task. You don't want to say like, hey, AI, maybe follow up after some meetings if you think it's appropriate. It's like, no, you want to say after the meeting, when it ends, retrieve the transcript, decide whether a follow-up is necessary, parse out the action items, write the follow-up email, give it to the human to draft. And so I think what people should think about is your task better suited? Is it so ambiguous and open-ended that you want to give the AI a ton of flexibility to achieve it? Beware, that comes with risk. Right. Or do you really want it to happen kind of the same way every time? And then there's just these moments of intelligence where you want to give AI a very directed task. Wow. And in my experience, like 98% of my tasks are more like workflows than agents, personally.
And I think every business or person has different goals for what they're trying to get out of these tools. And I think it from the lens of start off with the automation of, as you say, repetitive tasks, and 98%, I want to get that done and dusted. And then that's when you can really start to unlock, call it the true power of AI in some way, like letting it run wild on different ideas and tasks. And
and you build up your skills and your trust over time. Like I see a lot of people that are jumping right from I'm learning the basics of prompting in ChatGPT to I'm creating a super ambitious agent with 15 different tools. And I'm like, oof, like that super ambitious agent with 15 different tools is unlikely to work. So like what I recommend is like, first, become an expert at basic ChatGPT, then become an expert at custom GPTs and using chatbots for more specific use cases, then become an expert at creating simple automations with one AI step in between, then become an expert in creating more advanced AI workflows where there are several AI steps in there. And then you can, like, when you feel constrained by defining the flowchart up front, then you can move into more flexible agent building. And then you're likely to have a good time.
You touched on confidence, which I think is interesting. I had a real leapfrog moment probably 2 weeks ago when GPT-5 came out. And, depending on where you sit on, is it groundbreaking for you? Is it not? Yeah. I think that's besides the point. What I've seen is that from a lot of the, call it chatbots that I have with financial documents for work or for personal aspects, having the GPT-5 like accuracy and reliability of the outputs, like the reduction in hallucination has been genuinely game changing. So my confidence level in the outputs of what it gives me nowadays doesn't mean I'm second guessing the answer every time. And so as these tools are compounding, right, you've just got more and more trust in the way these things can be built. And if you want to wrap guardrails in and human in the loop and using Relay to create more sort of, call it rigid workflow type operations, that is 80% of the drudgery that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so why would you not automate a lot of that work?
Yeah, and I think to your point is like, and in Relay, we have optimized the product for workflows where there are AI steps. You
Right.
can build an AI agent. You can give your AI steps tool calling if you want. I just don't recommend it to most users because most users, I think, do not yet have the level of technical skill to be able to succeed in that kind of super open-ended environment. But yeah, I mentioned there are those two safety mechanisms you have as you're introducing AI into your work. Number one is you define the workflow more upfront, and the second is you keep a human in the loop more. And then exactly like you said, as you build more confidence in the AI, you can relax both those safeties. You can have a little bit less human in the loop. You can make your workflows a little bit less prescriptive. So for example, like I often write workflows that are like, let's say I wanted to do an email classification, extraction, and reply. In the olden days, and still probably today, I would recommend for most users, first classify the email, then extract the right stuff from it, then in a separate AI step, write the reply, then put it in a draft for a human in the loop. But if you want, you could just leap ahead to a single AI agent that says, review this email and decide what action to take. The tools you can call are you can label things, you can archive things, and you can create draft replies.
Right.
I personally, and I consider myself, I don't know about an expert, but certainly an enthusiast in this space. I personally have been unable to create agents with that level of open-ended prompting that work for me reliably, but maybe others have.
Yeah, and as you say, you just sort of you figure out what works for you, right, and your confidence level over
Yeah,
time. And these tools will get better and smarter, but also
totally.
brings a lot of risk with it as well. And so, out of where you're targeting in terms of the product, and you, as you called out, you can build agents within Relay and call on multiple tools. But from the outside in, it looks like you've opted for we're going to go towards the mass market, those who are
Yes.
potentially lowest knowledge when it comes to code. It's a no code builder, right? So you're sort of going for the general public and the SMBs around this is the easiest onboarding ramp to automation and agents.
Exactly right. So here's my take on the market. This market, this AI agent and workflow building market, is growing out of the traditional workflow automation market. So Zapier is the de facto market leader. They have the most integrations, they have the most automation fundamentals, they've done pretty well adapting to AI. And so other companies are kind of taking on Zapier from three angles. One angle is the N8N angle, which is like, we're going to make this more powerful, flexible, and cheaper for more technical users. Another angle I might call like the relevance AI angle, which is like, we're going to skip all that workflow stuff, all those triggers, actions, automations, and we're going right to agents. You just write a prompt and let it run. And we're tackling it from we want to build an even more intuitive, easy to use product for less technical users. Because even Zapier, you kind of need to know what an API is. You need to know what an ID is. You need to know what an HTTP request is. You need to know what a webhook is. And so we're building for people who either don't know what those things are or aren't sufficiently comfortable with those things that they can succeed in a product like N8N, certainly, or even Zapier. So yes, we want to be the product for every lawyer, for every real estate agent, for every marketer, for every HR person, for every recruiter who's intimidated by code. You don't need to touch any of those complex constructs with Relay. You can, but you don't have to.
And one of the biggest value adds I've seen within the Relay product, and I'm an avid user at home and starting to use it more and more at work, is the assistant on the side. You know, the like I've come unstuck a couple of times and the tool is incredibly intuitive, but as you say, you start to push the bounds of the scope of what you're trying to build and you go, why is it not ending up that way? Or why am I what's falling through the gaps here? But the assistant you have is phenomenal because I can talk to it, I can tell it what I want, it interprets, understands, and then it not only recommends the change, it actually applies the change if I tell it to. How have you devised that product? How has that been developed in such an accurate and sort of reliable way?
Huge amount of work. That has been such a hard project. Like a truly brilliant engineer has spent the last 6 months working on it. And the funny thing there is, like I mentioned, those three modalities, chatbot, copilot, and agent. That is a copilot that helps you build agents. So it's sort of like a touch of both. And so first, why was that product so hard? Because you look at Lovable and you're like, oh, Lovable, Bolt, V0, they just spit out web apps that are pretty good. Spitting out a workflow or an agent is way harder than spitting out a web app. This is kind of a counterintuitive thing.
Right.
With web apps, there are a million examples of open source projects. You know exactly how all the frameworks work. You know exactly what the UI is supposed to look like. With workflows, you're hooked into someone's Salesforce or into someone's Google Sheets. You need to know what sheets are available, what variables are available, what custom properties are available, what are the exact capabilities the AI agent has, what are the capabilities it has natively, what are the capabilities where you might need to use custom code or an HTTP request. So it's a super, super hard task. And we approached it in a very different way from other companies.
Right.
Most companies said, we're just going to start with one-shotting full workflows. We're going to give you a text box and we're going to say, what do you want to build? And the agent will just spit out a workflow. And those products have not worked. Those products have not worked because the thing they spit out is not good enough. And because the user is now totally doomed and has no idea how to make changes on top of it. So we actually started with a way more narrow scope. We looked at specific kind of steps within the product. So for example, we have a step type in the product called a find step, which is like looking up a calendar event or looking up a Salesforce record. And when you're using a find step, you have to configure some filters. So for example, in the context of a calendar event, you have to figure out like, was it in the last week and on this calendar and with external guests? So the very first thing we did is like, can we build an AI assistant that lets you write natural language? And we turned that into filters. Then we took that from find steps and we applied it to triggers as well. Then we thought, in our update steps, so a very common pattern is Relay will be like, receive an email, use AI to extract some values and add those to a spreadsheet. And we thought, it's so annoying in that update row step where you have to like take each individual thing and say, this AI output goes in this column. This AI output goes in this column. This AI output goes in that column. So we built a one-click button that's just like, what do you think should go in these columns? And so we first built up these little assistants for specific steps that would either try to completely autocomplete the step based on the data available in the workflow, or try to help you suggest a trigger.
Right.
Then we had the step assistant make more general changes to the step beyond just like the trigger filters or the columns. Then it was only after like 4 months of this project that we gave it the ability to add steps.
Okay.
Then it was only 2 months later that we gave it the ability to add triggers. And so now, and it still has a long way to go. Don't get me wrong. I'm not claiming it's perfect, but now because we've built it up from these building blocks where it really understands every step type, it really understands how to convert natural language into the right step in the workflow. I now have confidence that if you give it a whole specification of what you want to do, it can update the right steps, add the right steps, remove the right steps, rather than only being able to create from scratch. And I think we've approached this problem very differently from everyone else in the space in that regard.
Awesome. I mean, a lot of thought and work's gone into that, which is really exciting. I suppose another area that I'm really curious about is, and I haven't seen it nailed in a lot of these tools, and maybe
we probably haven't nailed it either.
There's, a lot of what people talk about, and as we all know with AI, is they try something, if it doesn't work, they turn off, or they build something that works for 3 weeks, and then the models change, and you go, why has it stopped working? And they don't understand the concept of AI evals. You've got the testing steps within your workflows and your agents. How do you think about 10xing that experience so people are optimizing their outputs?
I'm so glad you asked that because that's a part of the product I'm not yet happy with.
Okay.
So first point, people make a big deal about prompt engineering. And yeah, writing a good prompt is important. But in my experience, way more important than the prompt is giving the model the right data and the right examples. So here's the world I would love to live in. When you're writing a prompt and saying like, hey, based on this email, draft a reply, what I'd love to be able to do is say, test this on a previous email. Then, how well did the AI do? Did it do well? Did it not do well? Add some notes. And then that little bundle of evaluation gets folded back into the prompt. And then you test it again. Then you do another little bundle of evaluation, and that gets folded back into the prompt. You do another little bundle of evaluation. Maybe this time we do 3 models side by side. So you can compare which model is appropriate. We say like, oh, Gemini 2.5 Flash got this answer at this cost. GPT-5 got this answer at this cost. Claude Sonnet 4 got this answer at this cost. And so I think that's the way to move forward. Because like a cool situation that we're in is we have access to all of the underlying examples. We have access to your previous emails, to the previous Salesforce records, whatever you're trying to classify or respond to or whatever. We can just give you 10 examples of previous ones and say, what should we have done here? 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 Or even better, as you're training it, you start with a simple prompt and say, but then each time it runs that you have to correct it, we say, do you want to feed this corrected back example back into your knowledge base for next time? And so I think that's the opportunity to 10x the experience. Make it way easier to quickly test your prompt on 5, 6, 7 different examples, correct each of those examples, and then feed that back into the prompt for next time or into the knowledge base, whatever you prefer.
Oh, I love the sound of that utopia. I'm sure it's coming in
It's
25.
gonna take us a few months to get there. Honestly, it's super hard, but
Awesome.
it's gonna be awesome when we do.
Okay. And I suppose just before we touch on, I guess, the future of agents in the final sort of 10 minutes or so, how do you think about advising teams who have an existing stack? And I love your bucketing of, Copilot and conversational AI, I call it, I suppose. Then you've got the agent bucket. But if folks have mostly going to have Microsoft Copilot in-house, some might be leveraging another type of automation tool, call it like a Glean, an enterprise
Yep.
knowledge search tool. But how do you think about Relay as part of those broader stacks? Like, is it an or is it and? Like, how do you guide clients?
It's definitely not an or. Like, we're not planning to replace ChatGPT Enterprise or Glean anytime soon. The way I would think about it is there are a few key AI functionalities you need to have. Maybe there's just two, honestly.
Okay.
One is a chatbot, and I'm folding search and retrieval into the chatbot
Right.
because query-based interface is a very natural way to do search and retrieval anyway. And so whether that's ChatGPT with custom connectors hooked up to your data, Claude with custom connectors hooked up to your data, a bespoke product like Glean hooked up to your data. I think you need a chatbot where people can type into it and they can both get answers from the world and answers from their internal corpus, ideally blended effectively together. You need one of those tools.
Yeah.
Second, you need a workflow and or automation and or agent builder. I think, and you could
Okay.
use it to build simple automations. You could build it to workflow. You could use agents. So I think a very logical setup would be like ChatGPT plus Relay.app or Glean plus Zapier. And now I know Glean is adding agent functionalities. I know some of the other tools might be adding search and retrieval functionalities, but those are the things you have covered. And it's sort of just like we're used to making these SaaS decisions. So I don't think we need to overanalyze it. It's like, yeah, HubSpot has a CRM and a support tool and a marketing tool, and it has everything under the sun. But most people that I know use HubSpot, use one or two of the tools, and then they
It's
prefer to
valuable
use
as well.
Front or something else for support. And so I think the dominant philosophy I see in software buying right now is you
Mm.
pick a best in class tool in each category. And
Yep.
yes, sometimes there are economic incentives to bundle, sometimes there are product advantages to bundling. But having worked on one of the two major productivity bundles, the Google Workspace suite, I still many of our customers still used Slack and Zoom, of course, as best in class individual products. And so my
Totally.
personal recommendation, even though I spent a long time working in the productivity suite world, is just mix and match. Pick up. You have a set of 15 categories you need to buy tools in. Now we've added two new categories. You need a chatbot tool and you need a workflow or agent building tool. Pick a best in class tool. The other thing that I recommend specifically in agent building and workflow building tools is it's very different from CRM. In
Mm.
CRM, you need to have one for your whole company. It doesn't make sense to have multiple CRMs. Whereas I think, and we've talked about this in your context, it
Mm.
could be totally reasonable for you to have N8N and related app subscriptions. Those are totally consistent with one another because the way tools in our category price, it's not by seat, it's by usage. So you
Totally.
could totally say, yeah, I want to have N8N available for super flexible, low cost automations for the more technical members of my team. But I also want to give them related app for the less technical folks who just want to get things working more intuitively or more quickly. And so I think unlike for agent building tools, unlike in traditional systems of record, in traditional systems of record, you kind of got to pick one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas in an agent building tool, it's totally reasonable to mix and match and have multiple tools in the same way that I use ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini all on a daily basis for different things because I've grown to have, and I'm one user. Certainly within a company, it's reasonable that people would use all three of those for different things on a daily basis.
Totally. And as you know, that's how we're looking at it within our business. And I think there's a lot
And I
of,
think you're smart. I think you are unusually forward thinking. So I think your audience can learn a lot from you. Is you're not thinking of this as oh, I'm just going to pick one tool to consolidate vendor spend. But no, we have these 4 or 5 different needs, and maybe Glean can do all of them. Maybe Glean plus Relay covers this. Maybe Glean plus Relay plus N8N plus agent. And there are some you're probably not going to buy. I'm not going to give an example, but there's probably 2 tools that you wouldn't buy that are direct competitors that serve the exact same use case or exact same niche. But as long as you can carve out different niches and the economics make sense, I think that's a much more sensible approach.
yeah, definitely. And I appreciate your kind words there. I'm curious on the cost component because there's a lot of discussions these days around, some tools have had the all you can eat buffet, just keep hitting the models through our API key. And then I know with Relay, it's more of an AI credit and you've created
Yeah.
a common denominator, which seems a really smart way to go. And ideally the cost of compute continues to drop and things become cheaper and all the rest of it. But how do you see that pricing model change over time? Do you feel like you've landed on a mechanism that works for now, or do you think that's going to evolve over time pretty dramatically?
I'm not sure that we're right, but I think we're more right than the all you can eat options. Like, I mean, we've seen, the posts on Twitter about Replit gross margins or any of that. Like, I don't think all you can eat is viable in a world where 1% of your users could contribute 99% of your costs. Like, it's not gonna make sense. It's like, I think back in the day, Uber used to have a thing where like employees got unlimited rides and then one person took 7,000 rides in a year and they had to cancel that perk for everyone. Like that's what's going to happen. So whether people frame it as a subscription with a high limit or usage-based tiers, I think it's going to be just like the cloud storage market where it's like some people might claim unlimited, but there's always like an actual limit behind unlimited, whether it's an abuse limit or extra pricing tiers. Now, how that will play out, will it be literally like I pay 1 cent per token and 1 month my budget is 620, one month my bill is 26.83, the next month my bill is 33.84, the next month my bill is 50.51, the next month my bill is 25.26? I don't think that's likely. I don't like, from my experience working with people buying software, they don't like things that can fluctuate that wildly and that randomly. I mean, we see it with our AWS costs right now, and we've learned to accept it with AWS. But I think what's going to emerge is a model like ours, where you buy a subscription tier and you say, I'm going to pay Relay.app $200 or $300 or whatever it is every month. I get up to this amount of usage. I'm pretty confident that's going to cover me almost every month. I might have to pay a couple overages 1 month, but most buyers I've seen want a little bit more predictability than just like, it could be a totally random. Most buyers are willing to pay a little more to get that predictability. And that's why I think the market will settle on usage tiers rather than like purely a la carte payment.
Yeah, as you say, the CFO wants predictability, right? So the more we can give those ranges and show how you're tracking towards that range, people are going to be.
Yeah, and say like, hey, and this is a thing that we're not good at yet in Relay, which is we haven't figured out how to give people predictability, like based on their use case, how much it's going to cost. So I would love to be able to say like, hey, if you have an email assistant, Mike, if you set up an email assistant with your volume, that's going to probably cost you roughly $25 a month, like based on how many emails you get and what model you're using. Because right now it does feel a little bit random where it's just like, hey, I run some stuff, I see how much it costs, and then I feel credit anxiety. And so I think the way I imagine us moving, don't hold me to this, I could be wrong, is I want to keep the same basic structure, but reduce credit anxiety.
Right.
And so I think the way I want to articulate that is like, hey, if you're a team of this size that wants to use us for these class of use cases, you should pay us $400 a month. Like, and I'm pretty confident that's going to cover all of your needs. And by doing that, that would enable us to actually give you a higher credit cap with the expectation that you are typically not going to hit your credit cap. Because like you're paying $400 for this package of value, and I'll just give you enough credits to make sure you hit that package of value. I think that's what people want. You tell me, you're a buyer, but I think that's what people want. People are like, oh yeah, doing these weekly reports, doing this and this and this and this and this, that whole package, that's worth $500 a month to me. So figure out how to make the credits work such that I can do all that stuff for $500 a month without worrying about, ooh, do I have to switch to a cheaper model for this task? Or, ooh, do I have to try to cut 3 steps over here?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something I've been toying around with in my head is I get really excited by a use case and then I run the workflow and I go, oh, geez, that was fairly expensive. And I think that value equation is really interesting for people to understand, like, what is the actual value of the use case that I'm trying to build here? And obviously, what is the cost to deliver on that use case? And I think that's where there's a massive misalignment between, that's a really cool use case because I've now summarized my meeting transcripts and I've done X, Y, and Z. That's actually cheaper than something else I've built over here, which I actually like because it's kind of it's novel and niche and all the rest of it.
Yeah, exactly. Because AI does not charge based on value to you. Totally. AI charges based on tokens in and tokens out. And so you have to think about how that aligns. Now, maybe the way we should do that as product builders, we should charge you more for the things that you value highly, even if tokens in, tokens out are lower. That doesn't fit into our current pricing model. But the other overarching point is like, I have all these users who email me and they're like, whoa, this took 300 AI credits and it runs 3 times a day. That's so expensive. And I'm like, that's 50 cents. Like, imagine if you had to hire a virtual assistant to do this for $3,000 a month. Like, and I don't want to come across as callous or that I don't understand the value of money. Many of our customers are small businesses who are running on a very tight budget. But from my perspective, if you have an AI thing that's working for you at all and it's saving you 5 minutes of your day, we honestly shouldn't worry about cost at all
I
because it's so ridiculously cheap compared to doing it yourself.
Yeah, and it's sort of like the $20 a month for the paid ChatGPT license is the best money you can spend as the gateway drug for getting into AI, like
Totally. And think about it this way. So I have a meeting follow-up workflow. And let's say it costs me 30 cents per meeting to follow up. Because that's probably about right. It'll cost a couple hundred credits to 30 cents per meeting to follow up. First, how long would it take me to write an equally good follow-up without AI help? At least 10 minutes. Because I'd have to go review the transcript, I'd have to pull out the right quotes, I'd have to, sum it up. And so yes, is 10 minutes of my time more than 30 cents? Yeah, for sure, yes.
yeah.
But then even more importantly, because it costs me 10 minutes each time, there are cases where I just wouldn't have followed up after a meeting. And not following up after a meeting can make, or following up too slowly can make the difference between winning a 20K deal and not winning a 20K deal. And so what I would think about it like for leaders who build companies, treat your AI budget as essentially infinite. Obviously, this is self-serving because I am responsible for an AI tool, but ChatGPT, Relay, N8N, your Gemini API key, just like literally treat that as infinite. Because if someone on your team says, this saved me time, because here's the cool thing that is going to enable. It's going to enable us to have smaller teams. Smaller teams have less overhead, less bureaucracy, they move faster, they have less turnover. Like if the AI is doing valuable stuff for you, the money part of the equation will solve itself very quickly in your favor. So don't prematurely penny pinch on credits. I've seen so many companies who are like, ooh, we're not going to roll that out because it's like an extra $4 per month. It's like, oh my God, are you crazy? Like $4 per month across your whole company for this very valuable workflow. And so I think we need to do a better job of communicating the value also.
And it sort of goes hand in hand, as you say, with organization redesign in the age of AI. And I'm obsessed with that concept of tiny teams, which I'm sure you've come across around having like senior generalists who have 3 or 4 kind of roles. As you say, the more growth you experience, that introduces typically more complexity and that makes scaling even harder and faster, right? And I actually think that the way that most execs should be thinking about it, and, I'm speaking on behalf of more SMBs and not necessarily our organization, but the market in general, is just set aside a budget, as you say, infinite, but maybe to an organization's like 50 grand, or maybe it's 100 grand. And just
something but it can be way lower. I guess what I'm saying is way lower than that will be infinite. Like if you put $1,000 a month, that'll feel infinite.
So pick a number that feels like it's not going to break the bank, so to speak.
Yeah.
Just for a year or 6 months, a month, whatever you want to call it, and just run these tools, see that.
Here's the key thing. Compare it to what a human would have cost. Because it used to be that the going rate for a high quality blog post was $1,000. An SEO optimized blog post was $1,000. And so, we have a good blog. We would easily pay $5,000 a month for SEO optimized blog posts. And now I'm nickel and diming over the AI model I use to save $2 on the blog post when I no longer have to spend $5,000 or $10,000 a month on those contractors. And I get it, it's human. It's the same reason as when I go to the grocery store and I see berries 50 cents on sale, I'm like, ooh, I should get berries. They're 50 cents on sale. This is a logical flaw in the human brain. But the way we should free ourselves from that is just I think a very good way is just hey, we used to spend $5,000 a month on this contractor. What if we spent all that money on AI? What if we tried to spend all that money on AI? And I bet you'd find way more than $5,000 of value there.
Part of the challenge for most businesses is not only is the cost consideration warped in terms of how they think about human versus AI work, but it's also the way that they grade the outputs of AI. I don't believe that people hold humans to the same standard that they do from AI. Because as we know, they throw in a prompt and it turns to custom and you go, oh, it's no good. And you go,
imagine if you hired an intern, first day company, you told them to write a blog post with a very small prompt that's hey, write a good blog post about personal finance in New Zealand. And it wrote an okay blog post. Would you immediately fire that intern or say, interns are never going to work? No, you would you'd give it some more guidance on what good looks like and what we're going for and what our unique insight is. Anyway, we could talk about this all day, and I know we're running short on time, so I won't bore you with 3 more examples.
I have 2 more questions for you. Customers that you work with in New Zealand and Australia, have you made pretty strong inroads into this market?
I don't know.
The reason I say that is Relay.app is the product that I believe that alongside AutoHive and these other tools that I love, I think it's the gateway from progressing from using ChatGPT and actually using and feeling the power of AI. It is purpose built for organizations in New Zealand who don't have big budgets.
Right. So I think we're very well suited. Our Australian and our customers in Australia and New Zealand are super happy. The one thing they're unhappy about is I host a lot of live teaching sessions and I optimize my live teaching sessions for the US and Europe time. So every time I do a live teaching session, I get like 10 angry emails from Australians. It's like, mate, that's 1 a.m. That's 1 in the morning, my time. And so I've started to put a couple more sessions in the afternoon. I'm like, hey, you Aussies, you better show up. Like you made me stay late for this extra session. You better come to it. But no, I think like from a cultural small business perspective, like they're cost conscious, but also very forward thinking. Like it's actually been a disproportionately good market for us.
Yeah.
So I hope that continues.
Awesome. Yeah, I dialed into one of your sessions last week at 6 a.m. So thank you for the work you do in that space. I suppose looking ahead, agents are moving pretty quick and the development is awesome to see. Where do you think let's say the end of 2026, where will we be with this technology? Like what is the next leap forward in your mind for how AI agentic workflows really progress and develop?
We will make all hiring decisions in our companies fundamentally differently.
Right.
Like there will just be a set of roles that we don't hire for anymore. If you are currently a junior content marketer who takes a brief and turns that into a full blog post, that role will not exist anymore very soon. Mm-hmm. If you're a support agent who takes a customer email and then decides which pre-canned macro to reply to it with, that job will not exist anymore. They still exist now in many businesses that are not yet there, but there's a large class of jobs, and anyone who's pretending this is not going to happen, I think is misleading people. Like there will be a large class of junior roles in knowledge work that will not exist by the end of 2026 because things that right now have already been ruled out by sort of the visionary and early adopter companies will meet the mainstream companies over the next year and a half. So even if the products don't get any better, this is the crazy thing, even if the AI doesn't get any better or the products don't get any better, by 2026, we will see a massive change in how our workforce are constructed. I'm 100% sure of that because I know even if the technology does not get any better,
totally.
If the technology gets better, that's just going to broaden the scope of like which roles AI takes on. And now I'm an optimist. So the way I see that is we all get to do more creative, more empowering work in smaller, more autonomous teams. I don't see this as some big doom and gloom thing that all humans are going to be out of work. I think there's going to be a proliferation of many, many more small companies that can serve niches that were previously unprofitable to service. But for people at existing large companies, like buckle up. Like occasionally when I talk to a friend from Google and I'll just hear them speaking the old way, I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to add 3 people to my team this year and then I'll get promoted to manager and then I'll do these other 5 things. And I'm like, no. Like that is not how the world works anymore. You are living in 2022. And so like the quicker you adapt to 2026, which is exactly what you said, small teams, super ICs, strong generalists that know how to use AI tools effectively, that's what we're all going to have to be. And so you have 2 choices. You can pretend that reality is not going to exist, and then you're going to maybe have a bad time when it comes up, or you can build the skills now to be on the forefront of it. And so I really hope everyone chooses the latter.
Awesome. I mean, and good thing is we're preaching to the choir with this audience, but I think it's always good to get the lens of how people overseas are viewing the space as well, because I think we got buttoned down in New Zealand a fair bit in terms of the mindset. And I think we've got over the hump of, okay, it's not going to destroy humanity, fingers crossed. It's not going to take everyone's jobs, fingers crossed. I think we will realize that there is going to be a shift in the way we work and the way we hire and the way we grow our careers, which people are really waking up to. But it's just about how do we have a broader and more open conversation so that it's not just I'm going to be potentially a bit mean here, but like it's not only the knowledge workers who realize that, because I think that's where a lot of that knowledge and realization is happening, because it's on LinkedIn where people hang out. It's happening in business. It's definitely not necessarily the conversation that's happening on the street at the corner store, for example.
Yeah, and to end on a hopeful note, I think our company is already living the future a little bit because we're building a tool in this space. We started since this, like, we have all the right ingredients to be able to adopt these tools quickly. We have no previous legacy. And so I think to achieve our output, we're a 10-person team, to achieve the output we have now without any AI would probably be a double-sized team of 20 people. And let me tell you, it is so much fun to work on a team like this. There's no bureaucracy, no overhead. Everyone is super empowered. Everyone is really capable. Everyone can produce amazing output. I go to bed at the end of every day saying, wow, I got so much done today. I feel so good about that. And so, yes, like we need to make sure there are enough of these dynamic small companies that everyone is gainfully employed. But if we can do that, it's going to be a way better state than people like punching the clock at corporate drudge jobs where they hate and are drowning in bureaucracy.
Can I ask you a question? Do you track how many agents your team has running as like digital teammates, I suppose? Do you know
Yeah,
that?
the number, so A, the number has gotten high. It's well into the hundreds now. And B, as you know, like our agents don't exactly correspond to people because we give agents very specific jobs. Like your job is to write new LinkedIn posts from our YouTube videos. Your job is to research top LinkedIn posts in this niche. So I would say our 500 agents correspond to somewhere between 5 and 10 humans, depending on their level of seniority and breadth.
Awesome. Love the insight there. Do you mind if we finish off with a quick fire round?
Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini?
Claude.
Claude. Is that because you're a code developer type model and product manager guy, or just preference?
I'm actually not. It's because most of my work is marketing and writing, and I think Claude's a better writer.
Awesome. I second that in terms of the creative element. Most overhyped AI trend at the moment?
Image generation.
Nano Banana?
Yeah. So in my experience, these tools, Nano Banana and its predecessors, GPT-4, you can make some amazing cinematic stuff that looks super cool. Like, oh, look, a Viking ship in a rainstorm, whatever. But like the kind of stuff I want is like ads, marketing collateral, posters, and that stuff just does not work yet.
Yeah. It doesn't take the traditional way is still better. It's faster.
I tried Nano Banana and I could not get it to spell webinar right yesterday. I burned all my credits trying to get it to spell webinar right. So like it'll get there. It'll get there, don't get me wrong, but like it's not there yet.
Totally. One company that's quietly doing great AI work that's on the up that most people might not have heard of.
Whisper Flow?
Oh, boy.
Have you heard of it?
Yeah, that's my go-to.
Yeah, I think they're hot enough now that they may not still be under the radar, but it's a speech-to-text tool that, for me, has taken me from a very slow typist to a super fast typist because I just dictate everything now. It's an amazingly crafted product.
And for those not aware, basically what it means is you could talk and you could go around in circles and use ums and ahs and change what you're saying, and it'll produce a coherent version. It's not exactly what you say verbatim. It's
yeah, and it'll spell names right, and it learns your personal lingo and vocabulary. Not affiliated, just a fan. It's a great tool.
Love it. And what's your number one recommendation for people to get started in AI? And I don't want to hear let's just use AI, ChatGPT. Like, what do you give people as the practical, like, do this first?
Can I give a really self-serving answer here?
Absolutely.
I run 3 to 4 live sessions every week where some of them are focused on building an agent to do something specific. Some of them are focused on a specific agent building technique like prompting or triggering. They're all free. They're between 30 minutes and an hour. They're super fun. I think you've been to a couple of them. Like, I was never someone who was good at self-study. I could just never motivate myself to go through an exercise on my own. But everyone can show up for a meeting and follow along with what I tell them to do. So like, if you want to get started, just like carve out 30 minutes or an hour, show up for one of these sessions, and you will emerge with way more skills than you had coming in.
Worst case, watch one of the YouTube videos, put it on 2x, and you've got 15 minutes. Done.
Exactly.
Well, thank you, Jacob, for joining us today, and thank you to our listeners. Please subscribe to the channel for weekly episodes and to hear more from the people building New Zealand's and the global AI future. Until next time, thanks for tuning into the AI Corner.